Thank you for joining us virtually for a press briefing. My name is Kelly Chandler. I'm the Public Health Division Manager for Itasca County. We're hosting press briefings in Itasca every other Thursday to address COVID-19 related issues and questions, and today we will discuss the state of our Itasca County schools. Before we discuss the main topic of the day, I want to begin by thanking all of you who are doing your part, especially by staying home when you're sick, even if you have mild symptoms of COVID that resemble a cold or allergies. Staying home when you're awaiting test results if you have tested for COVID, and by staying home if you were in close contact with someone who did test positive for COVID. Together we can turn around the steady increase in positive COVID cases and keep our hospitals from becoming overwhelmed with patients not only with COVID, but other emergencies such as heart attacks and strokes and even influenza. Locally, our hospital capacities are tight, although we have had some reprieve in the past week, both with our local healthcare systems as well as regionally and statewide. But we know we are not out of the woods yet. We are cautiously monitoring any increases that were related to Thanksgiving or other gatherings. And we know it's so hard to sacrifice our time with our family and friends, yet decisions are being made about closures of certain businesses, closures of schools, pauses on sports, and these are partially due to the hospital and ICU capacities. Our healthcare workers need us. They need us in the community to make sacrifices now and make small decisions now so they can stay healthy and continue to care for us in Itasca and to get our schools reopened, our businesses reopened, and our sports moving forward. In Itasca County, we have identified 207 new cases in the past 7 days and 451 cases in the past 14. We have 40 Itasca residents hospitalized with COVID, and 11 of those are in ICUs. Sadly, we've had 24 deaths, our most recent this past weekend. Our sincere condolences go out to the family and friends of those we lost to COVID and those who are suffering from severe cases or haven't yet fully recovered. Our speakers addressing the state of Itasca schools today include David Pace, Superintendent of Greenway Schools, Dr. Jeff Pescha, Superintendent of Deer River Schools, Brenda Sparts, Superintendent and High School Principal of Nashwauk-Keewatin Schools, and Matt Gross, Superintendent, Big Fork and Grand Rapids Schools. For our question and answer portion of this briefing, we will be joined by John Pedersen, Senior Director of Support Services from Grand Itasca Clinic and Hospital. I will now turn it over to David Pace, Superintendent of Greenway Schools.
Thank you, Kelly. Currently in Greenway School District, we are in a distance learning model, K through 12. We have been in that model since November 19th. We did set, initially when we made that recommendation, we did set an end date that we would intend to return December 14th. Within that, though, we are continuing to monitor the number of students that are testing positive or staff that would need to be quarantined. But again, we are looking at, in some form, being able to return December 14th at some model, whether it be specific grade levels coming back. We're trying to evaluate that now. We are attempting to schedule a consultation with MDH before that time period so we can get their recommendation based on our data as far as going forward. So hopefully we'll be able to bring back at least our K through 4 at that point in time. We'll wait and see. We also want to inform the public that we do have meal pickup sites at the Greenway High School building and the Marble School, for meals to be picked up at those two facilities. Currently, we are providing childcare for our Tier 1 employees. Right now, the number has been floating in that plus 60 range basically every day. The other thing that we are, based on executive order, we do have the ability to bring in some of our students that require specific students or specific services and serve those students within their IEP. And we have been doing that every day, different students coming in, providing those different types of services. We are, as this progresses, depending upon how long we stay in distance learning, hopefully only until through the 14th. But we are looking at bringing in some of our career and technical field classes that have specific needs if we are unable to return to our models that we left back December 19th. So again, we are scheduling a Minnesota Department of Health consult to review our student data, our data within our school facility to see if we can return safely at that point in time, December 14th.
Great. Thank you, David. And we will now hear from Dr. Jeff Pescha, Superintendent of Deer River Schools.
Hi, good morning. At Deer River, the story is we started as a hybrid and trying to operate at 50% capacity or 50% of our normal occupancy or lower. We've maintained that model through to today and are optimistic that we can continue with that hybrid model. One of the reasons why why we believe it's been working is because whether it's by choice to go online or students that have been quarantined or staff that have been quarantined, on an average day, we have about 25% occupancy. So we were designed for 50% occupancy, but it's actually quite a bit less on a normal day. And that's really created a lot of space for us that's worked toward our favor. We did have a consultation on November 23rd with the Minnesota Department of Health where they endorsed us to continue as long as we could safely staff and didn't have outbreaks within our school sites. Right now, like everybody else, there are cases out there and it's impacted our students and staff, but it's been a limited number and it's been pretty evenly distributed across the entire school year. So we haven't had any specific surge that impacted us throughout the first half of the school year. Right now, we are able to staff every day, and we know that's a day-to-day thing. We've got to piece that puzzle together every morning. But so far, that's working out. Some of the things that have evolved in this hybrid model over time is we've been putting a lot of energy into being creative, supporting students out in their satellite communities within the district. So we've got learning hubs out at a couple sites where we're providing instructional and tech support, and district-wide, we've tried to get as creative as we can with some supplemental food grants to do as much as we can with food security. So there's the meals at school, the meals that students take home, and several other options that we're getting meals out into the community to help with that need. So that's the Deer River story.
Thank you. We will now hear from Brenda Sparts, Superintendent and High School Principal, Nashwauk-Keewatin Schools.
Good morning. In Nashwauk-Keewatin, we started the year all in person. In October, we transitioned kindergarten through 12th grade to hybrid learning. Just last Monday, the 23rd, we went to distance learning for kindergarten through 12th grade, calling it a reset, just like over in Greenway. We're doing this temporarily through December 14th with the hopes of coming back at least some of our grades into a hybrid model December 14th. The next couple days we will be evaluating what exactly our model will be looking like when we come back December 14th. So parents, students, if you were on, you will be getting communication over the next couple days what the 14th to winter break will be looking like for Nashwauk-Keewatin. We do have meals at the elementary that you can pick up at 9 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and also at the high school at 9:30 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We do have that Tier 1 childcare going on Monday through Fridays, any student contact day at the elementary. We probably have around 10 to 15 kids that attend that childcare any given day. And then we are bringing in special education students, both at the elementary and the high school, on a staggered Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, according to the needs of the student. We are also in our CTE programs, our woods, our shops, our autos, on a staggered schedule. We're bringing kids in to work in the school doing those because it's nearly impossible to execute those classes in a distance learning model. So while mitigating any spread of COVID and being really safe about it and having it staggered, we're trying to bring those kids in for those practical experiences in those classes at the high school. I just wanted to put out, if you are with Nashwauk-Keewatin schools and you are having any connectivity, internet issues, please make sure you contact either of the offices so that we can help you in the process of getting connected and maintaining that connectivity while we're doing our distance learning. And please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you. And now we will hear from Matt Gross, Superintendent, Big Fork and Grand Rapids Schools.
Morning, everybody. I'm sure similar to what's been said from my colleagues, we're in a distance learning reset through the 11th, and still working on the plans and examining what the data looks like, making a decision about the 14th. If we're able to come back, even if it's on a limited basis with our most dependent learners. And so a big part of it right now, or really the driver behind it, and what we've been trying to communicate, is that this is about our ability to staff our buildings at this point, be able to put teachers in front of kids, ability to support students with our educational support professionals or paras, our ability to drive buses and serve food. And if we don't have the ability to do those things, we don't have the ability to run school. And that's really what's been in the way at this point. I think the reset so far has helped things settle down a little bit in our school. And so we're seeing I think our staff numbers come down a little bit. So that's what we needed to see. And so hopefully if we can see that trend continue, we'll be able to pull back at least some kids back into school. The sports are obviously a big thing that we're watching. I think more decisions are coming out today about that. And but we know right now that the governor's pause goes for another couple of weeks here. And then we'll see, most likely things are going to pick up after Christmas with games and stuff like that. So that'll be out there. We're still pushing meals out, delivering meals. We're still running childcare. We have about 160 children at our childcare right now between the program the school's providing and our partner, the Boys and Girls Club. So that's a pretty busy program, and we know that it's still not enough. We know that distance learning is hard on parents, it's hard on families. We're not in a perfect situation by any means. We're just trying to do our best and make it through this together. So yeah, that's what I know from 318.
Thank you. And we'll now move into the question and answer portion. And we ask the media to please submit your questions via the chat box, identify your name and the organization you represent. I did want to quick mention, yes, our numbers have gone down this past week. There was some testing that occurred on Thanksgiving, although it was about half the capacity of what we normally test. We're still identifying quite a few positive cases, although we have had a leveling within the last week. Kathy from KOZY, how are your teacher numbers? Are there many teachers either quarantined or isolated? We'll let all the superintendents weigh in. David, why don't we start with you?
You know, it's varied. You know, I just pulled up some reports right now. We've got about, I mean, if we were fully in session right now, we would have, and this is, I believe it would be 11 staff right now. That's total staff, custodians, food service, whatever, that would be isolated, you know, in this time frame. So that's about, you know, 6 to 7% of our staff right now. And that is the number in which has varied significantly, you know, throughout the year. It has come down from our reset numbers. So hopefully that'll continue to go down. So.
Okay, and Dr. Pescha.
Yeah, when we did our consultation at the end of November, we calculated out what percentage of our staff, that includes all staff that work for the district, what their availability was, if they were on a quarantine plan or not. And I believe it was 8% at one of the school sites and 9% at the other that were not available to us. And those are numbers that are challenging, but they're not all that unique to a normal winter where we're, each day we find out who's unavailable to us for various reasons and try to piece the staff together. So we haven't had any days where we haven't been able to safely operate even at that rate. We did hire one full-time substitute at King Elementary and one full-time substitute at the high school to be there every day and report. So that's just, one more person that's available to start that puzzle solving process each morning. And that seems to have helped a little bit too. But like I said, the biggest factor for us in staffing is that any cases we've had in staff that are put on quarantine, it's really been spread out across this whole year. And we haven't seen that bump yet that's put us on the brink of making a decision to not operate for a day or more.
And Brenda?
Yes, when we went to our distance learning model and we made that decision a week and a half ago or so, it was based off our ability to service kids. We had so many, I'm not exactly sure the percentage, but we had many of our staff members on a quarantine of, if it's a 14-day quarantine, it was on a staggered, but it happened all pretty much at the same time, and it was really difficult. And just like what Jeff just talked about, substitute teachers, we don't have them. We don't have them. We have very few that are coming into the schools, and substitute paras, by the way. And so when we have people out, we don't have people stepping in to take their spots at this time. So it becomes impossible to cover all the classes that we need to. We also had multiple families of students that were quarantining early last week. So we had a lot of absences, both staff-wise and student-wise, early last week. It's calmed down, so hopefully that will continue and we can come back to school in some way on the 14th.
And Matt?
We've had 186 cases from the beginning of school, 77 in the last 12 days, that's students and staff. When we went into our reset, we were between 15 and 20% of our staff were unavailable. And kind of like the other districts, I think, are saying that are in a reset right now, that number's been ticking down since we've been in a reset, so it seems to be helping some. I agree with Brenda that, as a community, one of the ways that our community could support us, and I think some people have stepped up, is to sign up to be subs. We need guest teachers, we need guest ESPs. The more of those folks we have, the more ability we have to problem solve every day. We did a similar thing to what Dr. Pesta mentioned. We hired some full-time subs for buildings. So in the morning, they're available to move wherever we need to move them. And that does help take some of the pressure off. But hopefully we can see this trend continue. The reset seems to be doing what we needed it to do, and we'll be able to get back to normal as soon as we can.
Thank you. And Kathy Lynn from KOZY, what do you suggest for people who spend Thanksgiving with family outside of whom they live with? How many days after possible contact should people consider getting testing? We recommend testing 5 days, minimally 5 days after exposure. So Thanksgiving was last Thursday, so we're well within the window now that if you were exposed or you're developing symptoms, even if they're mild symptoms, sneezing, coughing, shortness of breath, sore throat, loss of taste or smell, you could access testing now, but 5 days is the rule of thumb. Jennifer, ICTV, can you please talk a little bit about how difficult it is working through this pandemic? It must be hard when you see in other parts of the world countries prioritizing education and keeping students in schools. It hasn't necessarily been the case here in the US. Not sure who wants to take that. Matt had to jump off, but one of our superintendents.
It's been a challenge. One of the biggest challenges for education, we've had a pretty traditional regimented system, well planned out. And it has been a significant change over this last month, the end of last year and going into this year is we're in a constant state of change, which has been difficult for teaching staff. It's been difficult for our support staff and very difficult for our parents and our families too. it is hard. And, you know, that a lot of the guidelines or standards that have been put out there, we're in a system that people don't, you know, that standard was put out there. And, you know, for example, you know, the biggest example out there is the guiding cases per, you know, 10,000. This was supposed to be our guideline, that this was going to determine how you were going to be in there or be in session. And we quickly, that evolved to how is it strictly impacting your buildings. And it always has been a chance, you know, so those things have evolved and people remember those things. I think the biggest challenge is we are always compared to other countries in academics. You know, I think it's key from what we're hearing from our Itasca superintendents. You know, if we have gone out on distance learning, we're doing everything we can to get our students back in the building as quickly as possible, because we know that in-person learning is the most valuable for the vast majority of our students. So, you know, I think, you know, and those are the challenges, and we're going to have detractors if we come back in session that are going to say we should stay in distance learning, and we're going to have the other side that says that we should be in session as much as we can, which we are trying. You know, that's why we're trying to get our students back in as quickly as possible.
And I'll just back up also everything that Mr. Pace just said, but also the flexibility of our staff and our families that they've shown over the last, however, 9 months, 9 months now or so. It's incredible. It's incredible what we've asked people to do and how they've responded. We didn't think that this would ever be the case of what we would see education come to or how we would be executing it. But really, it's just been really impressive how everyone has responded to it. And I'll just say as a leader, I mean, we know how this impacts families. That when we go to make some of these decisions and it's like, you just kind of cringe because you know the impact, but you know, the hard decisions have to be made right now. And so we just really appreciate everyone supporting the schools and how everyone showed such great flexibility in all of this.
And I'll just chip in, you know, one of the interesting things here has been the constant communication between local and regional school districts, sharing and talking about their situations. And I fully believe when people want to compare districts that I think every district that I've talked to, they're doing exactly what they need to do for their situation, for their demographics. And I think you could rotate the superintendents around and you probably would have every district still in the same spot because of how they're using data and how they're responding to the needs of their district. So the part about the challenge, I guess, with the pandemic is it's gone on long enough now and there's some fatigue related to it. So we've just really been trying to focus on the variables that we can control, because there's a lot that we can't, and that's where the fatigue comes in. So we can impact some things, and those are the things that we've been focusing on.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none, you all have the opportunity to reach out to myself or Allison if you have further questions that you'd like addressed. But I do want to leave you with this. We do in Itasca have the power to change our numbers. We have the power to get our schools back open. We have the power to get our sports back going, but it's going to take all of us to make really good decisions, monitor our behaviors. We will get through this together. Vaccines are coming. We're going to get through it, but remember to stay home, even if you have mild symptoms of COVID. Stay home if you're waiting test results. Stay home if you're in close contact to someone with COVID. Thank you for joining us.
UPM leads the integration of bio and forest industries. Our constant aim is to produce more with less. That's what Bio4 stands for. Paper is true Bio4 product made of renewable and recyclable raw material. It remains sustainable throughout its whole life cycle. UPM Bio4, beyond fossils.